Hi, welcome back to our lab. Listen, we've been planning to talk forever about this chart, but it's always so far in the lab. And remember, eventually I'm going to have this fantastic lab where everything is digital and I have rotating cameras that's above and below and we can catch every angle. But we don't have that right now. So we'll work with what we have. All right. So I wanted to talk about the stages of development. I'm Dr. Small if you're really just joining. And if you haven't watched our 8 overview videos, please go back and watch those first. You have got quite a few catching up to do. But this is exciting because we're talking about putting an end to the educational problems by discussing how the brain impacts learning and just discussing all the different strategies that will help to reverse the low performance that we are seeing across all schools, all states, right? Globally. All right, let's do this. So this is the stages of development. The stages of development comes from my source is Erik Erikson's Stages of Development. I also work along with the theories from Jean Piaget. And, you've been coming and learning all about the different structures in the brain, the frontal lobe, the limbic system. Let's talk about how some of this fall in, like their placements in it. Well, stages of the development just means that as we grow as human beings, that there's stages that we accomplish different accomplishments, different. I don't like to say the word thing. If you notice, I always tell the students and the scholars, everything has a name. And so whenever I have to say the word thing, it's so hard for me to say it because I always imagine the students saying to me, did you just say the word thing? Does that thing not have a name? So I'm guilty. So, different stages, we have different experiences based on our age. For example, a 2 year old or a 5 year old cannot reason on the same level as a 20 year old. And a 20 year old cannot reason on the same level as a 60 year old. It's based on the reasoning. Okay. I would never say that they're not as smart. I would never say that. You know, remember that show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? It's a real thing. Because if you're not studying something and talking about it every day, you probably won't remember it. Okay. So, stages of development. Now, you have the children, and from birth, you have some parents that when the child is in the womb, they start to read to the child. And naturally, the child a lot of time comes out with a affinity for reading. They got used to hearing books being read to them. And or maybe the parents would sing A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And yeah, we believe the little fetus can hear and they come out and it's familiar because they've been hearing it. ABC. Okay. Yeah. You have parents that even if it's that you put them in front of a television, or parents that like to give the kids the phone. Some of them got them watching crazy YouTube videos instead of putting them on a child appropriate video that will teach them and help them develop the early foundational skills so that they can do well in the fundamental skills. But it's a choice that we make as parents to either inhibit or remember, you can inhibit it or you can, what's the other word? Yeah, or you can, help it to go. Okay, that's a brain fart. They're trying to come up with a word that just says go. So you can begin to do that very early for your children. You can inhibit or you can allow them to develop these wonderful skills that they need. Okay, so That's what's happening. Remember we talked about the neurons and we said that excite, that's my word. You can excite at the neuron or inhibit, right? So they have little neurons too. And in fact, at this, when they're younger, they are born with so many neurons. I believe the new fetus has more neurons than when we mature and grow up. Okay, look that up. Okay. I know also that because of that, there was a thing a while ago, some years ago, when they were trying to see if they could get neurons to be specialized towards different activities in the brain. I'm just going to say thing, okay? Because I'm trying to not say it because I'm thinking a scholar is listening to me. But they were doing that thing, I forgot what it's called, but how you can, instead of letting the neurons die off, because remember how neurons are, that if a neuron don't make a connection at a certain stage in our development, if it doesn't connect, then it's going to be released. Only neurons that make meaningful connections are going to be remaining in your head and in your brain. You're going to lose them. So if you think, oh, some people have more neurons, maybe that's because they made connections. They used it. And when we're talking about our kiddos that's not doing well in school, that's having all these gaps, they're not using the neurons that were dedicated to be used for learning. These are some of the parents you cause this when you say, oh, they're too young. We don't want to break their brain. We don't want to over study them. You're allowing their neurons to be slotted off. You're allowing them to exit their window of opportunity. And window of opportunity doesn't mean that you're never ever going to be able to learn. That's not what it means. It just means window of opportunities when your brain is at a stage where it has a very strong propensity to learn certain information. And a lot of parents wait. You got to get them kindergarten, first grade, second grade. You got to get them. Do you know our academic success plan for kids? We only admit kindergarten through second grade in that particular plan. And the way that plan works is after 36 months, then your child, we give parents this understanding that after 36 months with our academic success plan for kids, your child will be the least 2 academic school years ahead, no matter what their foundation look like. And trust me, all of their foundation, all of the parents that are sitting there saying, oh, my child is fine. My child, I challenge them, just take our evaluation. If we're wrong, we're wrong. And if you're right, you're right. Show us that your child doesn't have this. Because if all the school data is showing the impact of this foundation, but you're going to tell us that it's not impacting your child, that's silly. You're setting them up to fail. Okay. Don't want to be disrespectful, but we have to be practical. We have to be transparent, and failing to prepare a child is preparing a child to fail. That's what one of the scientists said. Okay. So Benjamin Franklin said that. So if you're not preparing them to succeed, you're preparing them to fail. What does success look like? It doesn't just mean letting them go to school Monday to Friday in a cute little uniform. That's not preparing them to succeed. If you don't have a success plan for your child, you are allowing your child to be aligned with mediocrity, because if they don't have a plan, where are they going? Okay, where are they going? So let's move on again. So we have our stages of development. So when a child is between 2 and 11, okay, I put a little smiley face here. That kid's always happy. They're happy for everything and anything makes them happy. Okay, so you have, they love their teachers, kindergarten through second grade. I know 11 years old is not second grade, but we just said in general, 2 to 11, that's the window of opportunity when you want to get the information and you want to get the habits established here. And if you don't do it, If you don't do it at that stage, for those parents who are procrastinating and lethargic about getting certain habits in your child during this period of time, then they see the consequences later. They see it. And like, again, a friend say to me all the time, she says, 5 years from today, you're going to have to get fitted for a suit. So you can either go to court with your child or go and stand over them. And that's not ethical. That's not the ethical way. You got to prepare them to succeed. And if you prepare them to succeed through a plan, because every parent's going to say, of course, I'm preparing my child to succeed. Of course. Okay. You know what I say to them? Where's your plan? Show me a plan. Show me your success plan. Okay. Now, so K through 2 is the time. We don't take them after K through 2. I mean, we still work with children. We work with children kindergarten through 8th grade. But for the academic success plan for kids, only K through 2 can actually, those are your entrants. They have to enter that program in grades kindergarten through 2nd grade. And that's when most parents are saying to us, well, let's just see what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. But if you're not preparing, if you don't have a plan, and if your foundation looks like this, because it starts from preschool. It starts before that, but I'm not going before that. So in preschool, your child is entering kindergarten, they can't even read. Yeah, you're like, well, they're only 5 years old, but they can't read and they're 5 years old? What? So if they're going into kindergarten, they can't read. They're already at a disadvantage, already behind. Yes. So this is when we love to take them, admit them into that particular program. So we have other programs. We have private sessions, right? But for that special program, 36 months, and then they're out and they're 2 academic school years ahead or more. That's the least we've ever seen. And we don't like to promise parents what we actually see, because every child learns differently, and we want to make sure that we can keep our promise to a parent. But if they start with us K through 2 after 36 months, the least you would see is 2 academic years ahead, and not just in hit and miss skills. See, that's what a lot of programs do. A lot of isolated tutoring. You might have a child that's so high in reading, but they can't do math. Or they're really high in math, but they can't do reading. Or they can read and do math, but they're not good at science. Or, right? No, we believe in the whole child being developed, the whole child. Okay, and not just education, because we told you already, we don't believe that education is the all. Okay, it's not the all. It's a part of the success journey. They have to have a balance between and mindset and education. That's the way that they're going to align with their purpose. All right. So this is when you want it to happen. This is when you have the window of opportunity happening where they can learn almost anything, but it has to be a consistency. Okay. That's what you need. Because when you allow this period to pass, even when they just get to 3rd grade, and you know, 3rd grade is usually the retention year. That's when schools are going to kind of pull up the brake a little bit. So all along, this was happening. All along, this was happening with the child. Okay, all along the child had this happening from preschool and kindergarten. They were struggling and they were developing gaps, whatever it is that they weren't able to do. Even if it was just not being able to sound out certain type of digraphs, it was a gap. When they get to the next grade, they have trouble reading because they are unable to make those word sounds or blend those sounds. And my goodness, when you allow phonemic skills to go unattended, you have 6th and 7th graders that cannot read. And that's why, come on, it's nothing that they're drinking. It's not the milk. It's not too much sugar. We're just not applying what we know. Now, the curriculums are developed properly. You know, you have a lot of people that like to say it's the curriculum, it's the teacher, it's the school, it's the district. They're very, very well intact. They are. They're very well designed, all of the curriculums. I know you have people that says the curriculum is not good because it doesn't maybe discuss things about their personal culture. But I always tell people when they complain about that, I said, well, what's stopping you from just going to the library and getting books on the child's culture and teach them everything they need to know? I mean, so if the school curriculum doesn't include it, you're just gonna like let the child never develop it? Come on, we can fix any situation can be fixed. All right, so you see, the child is happy to learn right now. This is before they get defensive. This is before they even understand how to fully accommodate the amygdala. Yeah, before the amygdala have such an impact on them, before they have a chance to develop too much fear and doubt and disbelief and just a poor aptitude for learning. This is good. This is a good time to make it happen. So this child here, this child is here. It's a completely different child than you're going to see here when you're allowed to wait. And if you have a teenager, you can relate. Or if you work with teenagers, you can relate. Okay? They're always angry. Okay, so I'm joking a little bit, but they just have a lot more going on. Their amygdala is in full gear. They're a lot of things bother them. They're angry, they're hurting. And that's the word I want to stay with. A lot of them are hurting, because they know that they're growing up and they're in full entropy mode. Okay, entropic mode. They realize that they're growing up and they don't know who they are. They don't know what they want to do. They know they're unhappy. They don't always know why. Why do I feel this way? Why am I upset? Why this? Why that? They don't have a lot of answers, and the answers that the adults have for them, they don't like the answers that adults give them, because a lot of adults themselves are lost. They don't have the answers. They don't know what to do because they didn't develop their they themselves don't know their identity. Can I put it that way? They're still searching, and a teenager can tell. A teenager can tell, or adolescent can tell what's going on. So we're talking about ages 12 to 18. Okay. So you have your age 12 to 18, they got the little attitudes going on. And again, you had all this time to get them right. Because what parents do during this stage is what we see in this stage. These children did not do this to themselves. They didn't. We did. We did it to them. We developed whatever habit we allowed to develop here. Don't tell me that a 2-year-old child is in charge of the habits they develop. Don't tell me that. We allowed them to develop the habit. And a lot of times we thought it was cute. And I'm not the one to talk about when we defended certain things. That's the academic architect's job. And she talks about what happens when we went to conferences and the teachers told us, and we do so many things to defend the child. And a lot of times we do it in front of the child. We sit in front of the teacher and we tell the teacher, you just don't like my child. You're just not teaching them well. You don't understand how they learn. And we're doing it in front of the kiddos, and they're internalizing certain concepts for survival, and it transfers right over here. Then you have your child in 3rd grade. Sometimes they fail. If they don't fail, they're moving on with a lot of gaps. I stopped here at 8th grade. And believe it or not, we work with all sorts of children. We even work with adults, if they have forgotten a lot of their skills, which sometimes that happens. They want to go back to nursing school, but they don't remember fraction. So we we take them in a private session, but for the general program, we're working with grades 3 to 8. And for the academic success plan for kids, that's going to revolutionize the education system. And I have to tell you, it's barely anything new. It's what we know, but there's an inconsistency in what we know. And there's a lack of accountability in what we know. And that's what throws us off. So the curriculum, I tell you, it's intact. And if that curriculum was followed thoroughly, then you would see a better foundation. Okay? Yes, you would. Yes, you would. Dr. Small have a system for childhood enrichment and alignment. And what keeps us accomplishing our goals as we do is that we have accountability. We have a system of accountability that we maintain. And it's really tight. It's really intact. The accountability piece, not just the curriculum. It's not that the curriculum is better, because standards are standards. It's the same standard. Unlike fractions is unlike fractions. But the way we deliver it and our accountability portion is incredible, right? I would love for the state to reach out and incorporate our program, not just for the sake of fame or popularity. It's just, look at our data and look at what the data represents. It represents a lot of children growing up, and that's going to lose themselves. And the times are so different now. It's not like when we were younger and there's so many middle class jobs for us now. Because everything is so high due to inflations, kids can't make it. They graduate from high school and they realize right away, you're going to need $600,000 to buy a decent house in a decent neighborhood. And that's like the basal price in a good neighborhood. And so I wanted to get you to see our stages of development that you hadn't seen before. It was far away and it's still far away. So whenever I talk about the stages of development chart, this is what I'm referring to. So just imagine it in your head or take a snapshot, okay, of this incredible art. Okay, so remember, you want to reach them, because when you get there, this is middle school child, this is the middle school phase. And you have a lot of podcasts that lingers right there, and they're talking and they're laughing. What's going on with our kids? Oh my goodness, this system is horrible. The generation is this and that. And I don't find any joy in monetizing this, guys. These are real people. These are real lives that we're talking about. Yeah, they're misbehaving in school. Yeah, they're throwing stuff at the teachers. Yes, they're cursing out the teachers, bringing weapons to school. That's because they're falling apart. They're falling apart, and they sense the destruction. They sense the entropy. They don't know what to do with that. They don't even know what that means. You would know if we weren't having this conversation. Like, if you're not a person that have studied it, you would know either that this is what's happening. But doesn't it make more sense than to blame it on sugar? I mean, we had a lot of sugar. We all did, man. That candy, lollipops. We didn't give that stuff a break. All right. So again, this whole podcast was basically all about the stages of development. We still didn't wrap up our series yet. And since I have about 10 more minutes, I think that's what I want to do. I want to wrap up. Do you really want to succeed? Do you really want your children to succeed? All right. So how's that going to happen? All right. The first thing you have to do, you have to get your children to understand that mindset is important, that there are two versions of them. There's a lethargic and there's a disciplined side. All right. So that they begin to understand how their action impact their chance of succeeding. Children like to succeed. I know you're thinking, oh my God, they're young kids. You can tell them these things. You'd be surprised. Just pay us a little visit and you will see our scholars that gets it. And we balance play. Okay. Like I said, learn, I know I've only said it mindset and education, but in uh, other videos I've said, when we play hard. I mean, we have so much fun. Like even when we're teaching a lesson, we're not always just sitting down. There's a part where they have to sit, and especially when they're developing certain concepts that requires deep focus. And I know a lot of people like to teach it with the computer, but see, there's sometimes some skills, if you don't write it, it just helps to get it in their minds in a better way. And once that foundation is planted, I mean, these kids have so much fun when we teach telling times, and we got our chalks and we're marking on our sidewalk, and we're making our clock, and we're talking about the hour hand and the minute hand and elapsed time. They have a great time. They really do. When we do our showcase of excellence and the parents see their faces, what seemed like it was so stringent for children, you look at them and they're just having such a great time. You can't talk kids. You can't say, listen, when you go on stage, I want you to pretend. We used to try to do that when we were getting evaluated by our principals. And then you try to tell the kids, be on your best behavior. I want you to sit like this, right? And you always have 2 or 3 kids that was just like, I'm embarrassed you. So, yeah, we never have to do that. They're really enjoying the program. So it has to be they have to understand, you got to get their mindset correct. Okay. And so once they have that, you get them to want to do well. Okay. Everything I say happens. They want to do well. Okay? They learn to understand the situation. If you have a lot of learning gaps, that's why you struggle. Because before, they're thinking, I'm struggling in school and I keep failing my reading test and my math test because I'm stupid and I'm dumb and I'm slow. And you better believe at the recess, they're being told that. You failed that test? You're stupid. Your brain is slow. They do that. They do that. We hear it. So once they understand that, you get them to have a good aptitude towards learning. If you want them to succeed, you need an academic success plan for kids. Why don't we just say that? You need an academic success plan for kids. But since we're closer, I do want to explain this graph here. So here we have the primary school. All of this represent primary school. You have general education, which is just any general school, private, charter school, public school, all of them, even the private schools that you're paying all that extra money for, a lot of times they have those gaps. When I evaluate them, they have those gaps. They're unable. Okay, what kind of quiz are we doing? What kind of evaluation are we doing? We give the same evaluation of the skills that they should know that would create a foundation. We only assess foundational skills. We don't even assess skills at the creating and synthesizing level on the taxonomy, because if they don't have the basal understanding, remembering the skill, the definitions of what it even is, how can they create and synthesize? And that's what we found. So we give a beautiful evaluation that assesses the fundamental areas so that we know exactly where their gaps are. So that's what you have to do. You got to close their learning gap. If you really want them to succeed, close their learning gaps, close their learning gaps. And getting isolated tutoring, that's wrong. It's wrong because you're setting them up to fail. Because when you only fix one area and the other areas remain, then what's the point of that? You're giving them a crutch to walk through life. All right, so now you understand the stages of development and how important it is. Parents, if you don't get certain learning into your child between grades kindergarten and second, trust me. Okay? You see, I know you don't want your child to come home and cry, but isn't a little tears better now than a lifelong struggle? Okay. So that's where we are. And I think we are closing out this series right now. So let's get our kids ready to succeed. And if you really want them to succeed, you know exactly what to do. And I think if you could just say if you could give me one reason and one way to help your child to succeed, I'll be proud of you. One way. I know I say a lot of stuff, but one way is to close all their learning gaps. Don't get talked into closing one or two or three or four. You got to close all of them, because the whole point is to get your child at a certain level of education by a certain period, right? And then we could talk about them succeeding. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you in the next session. We're done with this series, but we're going to continue talking in some shorter videos and different concepts. All right. Thank you so much for being here today, and hope to see you in the next session. Later.